And we are live. Hello.
Yay!
Hello everyone. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to the Beyond Screens Alternative Controller Show. My name is Alistair and with me as always is my co-host Tatiana.
Hello. So do we have people? Yes, we have people. Hello, people.
Hello
So,
Bubble Reg. Hello Robin. Thanks for coming
familiar
along.
name. So in this show, we invite creators of altctrl video games to tell us about their work and show us what they're working on.
So, for those of you who might be new to the world of alternative controllers, these are video games made to be played using unusual custom controllers. For example, a game might be controlled with a door stopper, or perhaps an electric guitar, or maybe even a paper shredder. Or the creator might build a totally new object made by soldering together electronic components.
And today's guest is a familiar face, someone I respect a lot. And
Thank you.
and
I mean, I'm ruining the surprise, but thank you.
and this is Alistair. Alistair has been my co-host over the course of this year, but tonight it's his turn to be interviewed. And fortunately, Alistair is no stranger to the limelight. He hosts interactive stage shows. He made games for which he use his alternative controllers. This grammatically is incorrect. Also, this sentence is also grammatically incorrect. Whatever. And visitors to the Indiecade in 2017 may remember seeing the incredible Playable show, which took home that year's Jury Choice Award. So before we begin, let's take a look at it.
Patrons of Bristol Improv Theatre, welcome to this, the Incredible Playable Show. I am the Incredible Playable Man, and you are the Incredible Playable Players. Give yourself a round of applause. Now, any of you ever dreamed of being a supermarket floor manager? Yes? Excellent! With this power belt, I convey upon thee the power of the Green Power Ranger. Simply tap the power belt of the Ranger that matches the colour. Power Rangers, it's your job to just do what the Mighty Zordon tells you, because the Mighty Zordon always knows best. Upon the seats which you sat when you came in here, you may see little bits of paper. Also, at the back of the room, we have 4 colourful buttons. But I will tell you no more than that. My name is Alistair Aitcheson. I am the creator of all the games you have seen this evening. This has been the Incredible Playable Show. I've been the Incredible Playable host. You have been the Incredible Playable Team Bumface.
I enjoy watching that. Like, it's amazing. Like, because I love performing that show. It's really like been like just so much fun, performing this show. And I took it out to LA for Indiecade. I took it to Paris for Indiecade and everything. But obviously the last couple of years I've not had any opportunities to perform it. So it's like, watching that, even though it's like a trailer that I've seen 1,000 times, not least while editing it, like, it's like, I don't know, just sort of a real kind of blast from the past, like, but a blast from a past that I wish was a present right now because I want to be on stage again.
Yeah, I had the chance to experience it, and even I got nostalgic watching the video. We'll have some time to talk about the Incredible Playable show. I guess we could just jump right into the interview part.
Yep, that sounds good.
And well, you know the drill as much as I do, but how did you start making games? From what I understood, you started making games in 2001.
That's correct. Yep.
So 20 years ago. So how did you make games 20 years ago? You were quite young back then.
Yeah, well, so I was 14 at the time, and it was, I used a programming language called Blitz Basic, which was, it was a version of Basic designed for making games with, so it had a lot of kind of, pre-written functionality for dealing with graphics and sounds and things. So I guess, I'm trying to think what the equivalent would be today, but I mean, it is that kind of same kind of level of accessibility that Unity, say, has today. A lot of people recommend people start with Unity, and it was that kind of, even though it kind of worked differently, it was that kind of sort of ease of entry level. And I got this right around like my 14th birthday, and the first game I made, everyone says, the first games that you make, like, focus on small projects. And I didn't really, no one really advised me to do that, but, like, I don't think, I think, like, basically, I had an idea I wanted to make. I really liked Zelda at the time. I wanted to make a Zelda spoof. So I made this Zelda spoof game called Alf the Elf. Which was supposed to be like a kind of Mickey take of Zelda, and it took like 9 months to make. I made it beginning to end. It wasn't very good, but for anyone who's played it, and I know that one person in the chat, I know Bubble Reg is a friend of mine, so hello, and he's played it, and he knows it's surprisingly long. For a first video game, it is quite a grand epic. Unfortunately, it didn't play particularly well. So, but it was certainly an adventure. And I think, like, having done that and, being able to look back at all the things wrong that, didn't work about that game and, like, understand why people say, oh yeah, you should start with small projects. Like, all of that was quite a useful bunch of learning experience going forwards.
So for people that don't know Blitz Basic, I'd say the interface is way more, like, it's nothing complex as Unity. It's more like maybe processing.
Yeah.
It's mainly the text editor, and then you have to figure out your way in the code, basically. So it's a bit a harsh start in programming. I think it's not like Scratch, for example.
No.
Nowadays you have tools that are more welcoming.
Yes. And I think
this was a cold tool.
Yes. But it was, it was a helpful way to get my start, and it came with, tutorials and things in the manuals, and then it got to a certain point. Once I got to a certain point with it, I started going, like, oh, I'm just going to look up a random function. I don't know what that is. I'm going to try and use it. And that's sort of how it evolved. But within Alf the Elf, there's this kind of, like, the tech of it. The further you get through the game, the better it gets technologically. Like, in terms of, in the early levels, there's never any more than 3 enemies on screen. And then there's a point at about halfway through the game where I figured out how to get more than 3 enemies on screen, and you'll have like 100 enemies on screen, like, all the time. So
you can feel the learning curve inside the game experience.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
So what's interesting is that you didn't actually study game design, not directly, which is not that common in this field. Instead, you studied mathematics somehow. And why? First, why?
So I started university in 2006, and I think, like, a couple of things. I was really good at maths in school. Like, that was a thing, and I'd kind of never really considered games as anything more than a hobby. Like, it hadn't even crossed my mind to think of it as a kind of career option. And I think, like, so when I was applying to university, like, maths seemed like the obvious choice of what I wanted to do. I don't think at the time there were, as many games courses, and certainly not of the quality that there are now. So it wasn't really something that was on my radar at all. Like, it was at university, there was no one else I knew making games either. So I didn't have an opportunity to make games with other people or anything like that. And one thing that there was University of Warwick, one thing that they had there was a game design society. So it was like a game development club, of which there were about 20 of us in this club, meeting every week, doing game jams together, working on kind of group projects, and also just like chatting to each other about games that we liked and game design that we liked, and like passing around books. Like, I discovered Raf Costa's Theory of Fun for Game Design, like through someone lending it to me from that club, and it just, it just blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And it was through that is when I started to go, this thing I've been doing, just as a hobby on my own for so many years, I would enjoy doing this as a career. And that is really what set everything in motion, that basically made me go, like, once I graduated, yep, I'm going into video games. And also at that time, the iPhone was relatively new. The App Store was relatively new. It was, a good time for someone who could make games on their own to go out and strike out in the world and say, maybe they could, maybe I could develop my own one-man indie studio, just me doing that thing I love. And I guess that's really how the ball was set in motion.
And after that, what's interesting is that we have something in common. Our first games, games in the sense of release to the world, not like as a hobby and no one hears about it. For me, it was on iPad. For you, it was also some mobile technologies.
Yeah.
And it was right after your math studies.
That's right, yeah. So there was this game called Greedy Bankers, which I made. It was basically as soon as I'd finished my exams, and I was like, oh, great, I can spend time making games now. And I was following a thing it was like the experimental gameplay project workshop. I think it was run by the people who made World of Goo, and they would give out like monthly prompts or something to make a game about. And I was like, I'm going to make a game for that. And I can't remember what the prompt was, but what I came up with was this kind of puzzle game where you're dragging gems around a screen to match them into groups to make them worth more money, and then you cash them in. And because the financial crisis was still big news at the time, and the phrase greedy bankers was being, all over the media at the time, the game ended up being called Greedy Bankers. You're making money, and that's it. Wasn't as, I don't think it was as satirical as people expected it to be from the name, which is possibly a lesson in that. But it was, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed making that, and it was certainly like the big thing, because there were two versions of it. There was Greedy Bankers on the iPhone, and then Greedy Bankers versus the World. And in Greedy Bankers versus the World, that was the one for the iPad. And versus the World, because I wanted to put the word versus in there somewhere to indicate the fact that you could play it with two players, and you're competing against each other. And it was sort of, a picture kind of puzzle mechanics, kind of like Puzzle Fighter or Puyo Puyo or Tetris Attack kind of thing. What happened by accident is in the two-player mode, you could reach over to your opponent's side of the screen and drag any gem on their side over to your side. And people really liked doing that. So I decided to incentivize it. So every time you steal something from your opponent, it doubles in value. And what kind of came out of that was that the game of pushing each other out of the way to try to get to the screen was much more interesting than the puzzle game. The puzzle game was, it was a kind of adequate puzzle game, but wrestling over a touchscreen was kind of special. That was the thing that people went away talking about. And so that's what got me kind of playing around with things that started to creep into my kind of playing around with alternative controllers.
Yeah, it's usually in competitive game when you have direct competition, direct interaction in general, it works better because you really feel like you're playing with the other player, I guess. And that's fascinating how it went from being two persons competing, okay, but playing on each side of the screen into something that I would call iPad became a territory to conquer in the physical space.
Yes.
And this was your turning point to altctrl.
Yeah.
From what I understood, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of, because what's going on when people are fighting over this touchscreen and they're pushing each other out of the way and things, what they're doing is they are coming up with creative ways to solve this problem. And it's not just creative ways of how to win and how to cheat effectively, but also ways of how to make your opponent laugh. Like, there are some ways that you could find to cheat. For example, tickling your opponent. And it may not be the necessarily most strategically effective strategy, but it's funny. It's funny that you tried to do it, and you got to express an element of creativity. You got to express a bit of your personality by doing that. I'm noticing on the chat mentions of the Copenhagen Game Collective, and it was kind of basically after making Greedy Bankers versus the World and seeing this happen, I started reading like Douglas Wilson's writings and stuff like that, and that idea, like I still remember talking about a game where people stand side by side, stick their fingers in each other's mouths and try to tug. And and the objective of the game, like on paper, the objective of the game is to cause so much pain to your opponent that they cannot continue playing. But the real objective of the game is to make silly faces. And it's like the rules, the game, the goal is just an excuse. It is just a motivation that the players and the spectators can agree on. And everything that's done off the back of that is a kind of creative response to that. And that's really fun. So how this kind of gets to alternative controllers is that, like, Greedy Bankers versus the World spawned a game called Slamjet Stadium, where players shared an iPad and it kind of played around like a bit like air hockey. The theme was kind of like futuristic death sports, think of kind of rollerball or, the Thunderdome or something like that. And then that kind of idea developed further into a game called Tap Happy Sabotage. So Tap Happy Sabotage took place on this big kind of 27-inch touchscreen, and could be played by as many people as you could physically fit around the screen. And the rules of the game were really simple, is that everybody had a card they were looking for with, like, they all had little pictures on them. I could probably find you a video of it, just so you can see it in action. But the idea was that everybody had, like, a picture that they were looking for. So maybe a picture of a bee or a picture of an ice cream. And in order to score points, they just had to... Okay, and it's going really loud. Sorry about that. There we go. Let's switch over to the video. There's Tap Happy Sabotage. So everybody on the screen is looking for these pictures, and they just have to press them to score a point. But as it goes on, different rules start to get introduced, like maybe you have to hold down 3 copies of your card at the same time, or maybe you have to drag your card away from this enemy that's bouncing around the screen trying to hit everything. And what these are doing is just giving you different ways of moving around the screen and different opportunities that you might find to cheat. So like the one where it's like, there's one of don't touch your card, for example, which really means touch everyone else's card before they can touch your card. Or the one where the enemy's bouncing around the screen. You could grab your opponent's card and sling it straight into the enemy. And what that's kind of sort of every rule is secretly an excuse for people to cheat in interesting ways. And of course, that physicality, that how do you negotiate, the physical space of the screen, that's all in there. That's kind of what's happening. I feel like with that kind of journey, there was this lesson about kind of simplicity is ultimately like the puzzle game and, the football mechanics and everything aren't necessary. You just need a simple objective that everyone can agree on and then put them in a space where that objective is going to cause them to do a range of silly things, of their own accord.
Yeah, the emergence of a social gameplay, I see where Celia is going with the Copenhagen game collective. It reminds me of Button, brutally unfair tactic, totally okay now. So Button is an acronym. And again here, so the difference is that it's played with gamepads, but you again have to negotiate based on some rules. And the rules can be don't touch your button, be the first one to press 10 times your button. And there are some games like this in the alt-ctrl movement that are first really close to video game if you describe the device in itself. But when you look at it, it's full alt-ctrl. So it's interesting for me that it can be really hard for some alt-ctrl games to be, if you go just for the object that is alt-ctrl, some games are obviously alt-ctrl because it's custom made, etc. But we have some alt-ctrl experiences coming from a fully traditional video game setup, like multiplayer on a tactile screen, like in this example. And yet it's obvious when we look at the video that it's an alt-ctrl game because of how much physical the experience is. It's interesting for me that there is so much porosity. It's the border between video game and alt-ctrl, and it's hard to define exactly on which side of the border you are. So it makes sense that it was a transition for you from more traditional video games to alt-ctrl.
Yeah, I think that makes sense as an analysis of it, really. I kind of, at the time, I think, because I'm trying to think like what alternative controllers would have been on my radar at the time. And like I think I'd read about Button and I think I'd seen it but never had a chance to play it. And Johann Sebastian Joust, that was the other one that I really enjoyed. And again, it's a lot of those similar things of, the magic is going on outside of the screen. It's like, how are people interpreting the rules? Stories of people taking off their shoes.
For the audience, Johann Sebastian Joust is another game from the Copenhagen Game Collective. It got inspired by a game that was played during antiquity, Roman antiquity, that was called the Candle Game. So during Roman antiquity, Romans for parties were lighting up a candle. And the point was to be the last one with a lit candle. So you had to blow and to stop the candles from the other being lit, unlit. Just a simple word. Unlit the candles of other players. And so Johann Sebastian Joust is basically a digital take on this based on PlayStation Move. So it's a competitive game for 4 players without screen, and each player has a PlayStation Move, and the point is to tap on the other player's PlayStation Move while protecting your own. And there is a twist. There is music. When the music is energetic, the PlayStation Move is less sensitive. And when it's not energetic, then it's really sensitive. So you got to be really careful to your PlayStation Move. Sorry for interrupting, please.
Oh no,
go on.
not at all. I mean, one of the things I remember, I mean, it's the, like, that you would get with Johann Sebastian Joust is you would get these little moments where, like, someone would do something like they would take off a shoe and throw their shoe at someone in order to get them to move their controller and lose the game. And it's like that little bit of creative thinking, that bit of, like, no game, you know, could have seen that coming, could have policed that, could have, you know, it's like that was a totally organic experience that evolved naturally from the game rules, and took place entirely in the real world. And that's the kind of story that when people go to tell their friends about the game afterwards, or when they, you know, when they're reminiscing about it at the pub afterwards or whatever it is, like, those moments are the story of the game. And I think, like, it's something that I kind of learned from seeing and reading about stuff like that, and then also making games like Tap Happy Sabotage, is, like, the magic, like, as my designer, my role as a designer is to create lots of opportunities for those moments to occur. But, like, I am not making, like, the people having those moments need to believe, and they usually believe it because it is entirely true, that they have come up with these solutions themselves. You know, throwing a shoe, for example, you know, tickling your opponent in Tap Happy Sabotage. Like, I never told you to tickle anyone as a designer, but I put you in a situation where you were encouraged to come up with solutions like that. You know, that's the sort of, I guess, what I see my role as a designer.
Yeah, emergent behavior. Absolutely, it's exactly about this. And it's interesting that in Joust I crawl a lot,
Right.
because I'm short.
Yes.
So you have to come up with solutions that are based on the on variables that are physical, that you don't have in a digital space, obviously, because I don't have to. Well, I'm not short. My digital avatars are not short, except if I chose an avatar that is. But so you have to play with physical rules that are here, and it's not just about morphology. It's also about the previous social context you play in. So, for example, in Joust, something that I sometimes do is jumping on people, but this is like really testing the limits of the social boundaries, because it's a physical space. Like, it's not playing Super Smash on the Nintendo Switch. It's like I'm physically jumping on someone, and how is this person gonna react depends a lot on so much parameter, the environment, the relationship we have. Usually it's someone I don't know. So this is really different in the way you will also like recollect the memory of the game afterward.
Yeah.
And how it stick with you.
Yeah. I mean, it's like your relationship with the game, your experience of the game is dependent on your personality and the personalities of the people around you. So, like, you will have a unique experience, you know, and it would have been different if it wasn't you playing, and if it would have been different if you were playing with a different set of people or in a different room. I mean, speaking of rooms, like, the next step that Tap Happy Sabotage went on was, and this is where the alternative controller starts to become a bit more kind of obvious, is I basically changed it for it's an event called Game City in Nottingham. I'm going to open up a video of it now so you can see it in action. So it was originally called the Dash and Bash edition because it was basically the same rules, but now the cards are on screens and the screens are in a room surrounding the players, and they need to find their card and bash the button next to their card. And as it goes on, the rules start to change around and things, and there'll be things like you'll get like a big grid of cards and one of them will have 3 copies of your card on it. The others will only have 2 copies of your card. So, it goes from this fast pace of everyone kind of leaping around and now everyone's suddenly gone very slow and they're all kind of, looking like they're all looking around going, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? And then suddenly again, run around, run around, run around. And so it made a lot of noise, which is good. But I think one of the things that was really special in taking it from a touchscreen into a room was that people would they would become more expressive, and all of that personality stuff, all of that, people expressing their mischievous side or whatever side, or, playing just to make people laugh, not necessarily to win. All of that just got bigger once people started moving around more. And that was really interesting. That's not something I'd seen before. And that the power of running around was kind of rattling around in my head from that point on.
Yeah, you extended the territory to conquer. It started on screen. Now it's a room.
Yeah, but it's not just conquering. It's also the number of options you've got available. When it goes from being just your hands are your, your expressive things for controlling the space to, with a bigger touchscreen, it's your arms. When you're running around a room, you've got your arms, you've got your legs, you've got your torso. It's long enough ago in the past, this is 2014, that any health and safety issues are probably long behind us. But I did see someone body check someone into a hole while playing the game. Fortunately, no one was injured, but thinking about what that offers to the play experience rather than what that offers to the health and safety issues.
Yeah, but now you could use your shoe and try to throw it on the button, for example, to come back to the example you used before.
Yes. And that, I think it's not just about, if you take controlling territory as being the okay, here's your starting point. Here's the starting context for why you would want to get in someone's way, then, okay, you've got a bigger, broader amount of territory to interact with. But thinking about the game as sort of just an excuse to perform, just an excuse to make your friends laugh, just an excuse to express yourself, that blocking each other in the room becomes a bigger movement. And you have the option of so many more body parts to work with and so many more physical objects to work with in order to play with that game, that sub-game of do something silly while playing this game. So I don't know. To me, that's where the physical space adds a kind of spark of magic to it.
And then you make Dash and Bash evolve into based on these reflections on the social relationship between players and how you can make some social behaviors emerge, trying to basically to put a fertile soil and see what emerges, what grows in it.
Yeah, that's right. So the sort of Dash and Bash kind of evolved into a game called Codex Bash, which is up on the screen right now. And so Codex Bash was basically taking that idea of, I want a game where people run around hitting buttons, but instead of it being a kind of competitive thing, it becomes a kind of problem-solving game. It's about, can you decode all the problems while doing all this running around? The original idea being that I've lost my train of thought, sorry. No, okay, so the original idea was that people would play it on their own, and the challenge was it's hard to run around and do all this physical activity while also having to do this kind of mental activity at the same time. And it's about the sort of the changing dynamics of going between, you know, physical activity and mental activity. What I found when I showed it at events was people would naturally come up with a very simple solution to this problem, which was to invite a friend to help them. And then once they've invited the friend to help them out, like, you get all of these sort of social dynamics start to go on in the group. And different groups of people will operate differently within the game. So like some of them you'll have one person who does all the problem solving, and you'll have one person who does all the running around. Some people will go, okay, I'll take the red button and the yellow button, you take the green button and the blue button. But those kind of dynamics, those group dynamics, are being come up with entirely organically. You know, nothing in the game tells them how they should operate as a team. Nothing in the game even tells them to play as a team in the first place. So all of these little things of making the decision of, you know, I'll think you run, or come and join me, they are these little eureka moments. They're these little problem-solving things that are kind of equally accessible to anyone, whether you've played a lot of video games or not many video games. That little eureka moment of, oh, I could ask a friend to help me out. Like, that's your solution. You can own that. You can feel smart about having come up with that cool idea.
So for the audience, this is how Alistair and I met. We met around this game at the Amaze Festival in
2015.
It was 2015?
Yep.
Okay, so I was there for Magnesia, and you were there for Codex Bash.
That's right.
And so I played this game with a friend of mine. We actually tried different social structure. Those you're describing right now, we tried different of those during the game. So for the audience, you have a screen, and on screen you have a sequence of symbols that will be changing over the course of the game. And then you have a manual where you have what is the correspondence between the buttons and the symbols. So it kind of feels like Keep Talking, Nobody Explode in a way, if I have to make something close enough.
Yep.
So you have the idea of the manual to find the matching button. And what happens usually is that as the buttons are really far from one another, one player will have the manual and try to quickly understand what is the correspondence. But of course, you have a certain amount of time to do this, and someone else will run. That's really the go-to. I'd say most people I've seen playing would play like this, and some would both do the manual reading and then separate to run to each button, especially because that's something we didn't mention, but the buttons, you change the position of the buttons from one setup to another. So for the Amaze Festival, for example, you were outside and inside, and it wasn't the same setup.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, that was actually the first time I'd ever run it, was going, at the Amaze Festival. So I was kind of up for trying out different things and seeing what happened. And it kind of doing that started to spawn discussions and chats about what other things we could attach the buttons to. So like, lampposts, you could play it outside. Dogs was quite an interesting one. But the problem with dogs is that dogs will always run away from you in the same way. If you attach a button to a dog and try to play a game with it, the dog's probably just going to run away from you. But if you attach them to humans, they could do all kinds of interesting things, because they understand the kind of play dynamic. So they might try to make it easy for you, try to make it hard for you. You could tell them to do specific things like crawl on the floor or pirouette or try to climb a tree or something. And that evolved into a game called Go Power Team, which I ran. This was in Berlin in 2015 at the end of an event called Join. It was a local multiplayer event. And I put the 4 humans in morph suits. So these were all volunteers from the venue. And they have these buttons attached to their bellies. And so these, effectively, they work like the buttons in Codex Bash. What's gone now is the puzzle. Because the puzzle of trying to figure out which button you pressed, like, on top of the fact that the buttons are attached to human beings who are really complicated to get hold of, like, that was too much. So I was like, okay, let's attach, instead of having the puzzle, what the game does is it shouts out commands to the humans, the Power Rangers, to ask them to do different crazy wacky things, like crawl around on the floor, pretend to have a fight, maybe find someone in the audience, because it was, it was made with the intention of being played in front of a crowd. Find a person in the audience and hide behind them. All of these different things. And what's happening is, because the buttons are attached to human beings, like, the buttons become harder to hit, and that's the challenge. But another thing kind of crept in, and that was that the people wearing the buttons, particularly when they were in the morph suits, they would want to perform for the audience. They would want to make the audience laugh. And the audience, even though they hadn't been given a role in the game, they wanted to interact with the Power Rangers. So there were a lot of people just trying to reach out and touch the morph suits to find out what they felt like. And we had, like, we had Power Rangers hugging audience members, which was not only a funny thing to do, but also made it hard to press the button on their belly. So it's kind of like that little creative interaction has created a challenge that the player now needs to negotiate. And that's sort of, like, I think, like, to me, that's really fun. And off the back of that, I started to go, could I take this idea, this thing of what that thing was, where people enjoy getting up on stage and performing something silly and making a crowd laugh, and people in a crowd like finding ways to participate even if they're not given a specific role. Could I, like, push this further and turn that into, say, like, an hour-long show? An hour-long show made up of games like this. And that idea is what evolved into the Incredible Playable Show.
For people that join us after the start, this is the video we had during the intro. And the Incredible Playable Show is the third time we met. I experienced it the third time Alistair and I met. It was at Indicate, but Indicate Europe. I experienced it at Indicate Europe. It's basically the convergence of you merge many things you did before into this show to make one big show. So you have ideas coming from Codex Bash, but here with code bars, for example. But there is this idea of it's not a button, but the input is, sticks to someone, is stuck to someone. And you didn't talk about this, but I know that clowning is an art that is close to your heart.
That's
I don't know if we can say this, and we can feel this in the kind of playformances that you offer people. This, and also give the audience the possibility to perform and to be creative and to be artists themselves. These are two topics that are really themes for you and part of your creative identity, I'd say. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I will certainly not correct you, because I think that's absolutely spot on. I mean, in terms of giving people a space where they can come up and perform, because I think, people like to make a group of, a group of people laugh, you know, and it's nice to, you know, entertain a room full of people. And the problem is with that is that most people don't get an opportunity to do that. You know, I used to go to a lot of improv. Down near me, like 10 minutes walk away, there's an improv theatre, and they used to do like weekly jam nights where anyone could get involved, and, you know, get up and do like little improv games and that. And like, I really like that flexibility to be able to say, like, anyone in this room can be funny. Anyone in this room can be a star. You know, my job as the host is not to, you know, to be the most important person in the room. Okay? My job as the host is to allow everybody else in the room the opportunity to be, you know, the funniest person, the silliest person, the loudest person. But my job is to facilitate that. And sometimes that involves putting on a nice big personality. And making loud noises and, you know, and making a star of myself, because there are people who would feel shy, who would feel very self-conscious coming onto the stage, but would enjoy taking part in the games and would enjoy doing something silly and creative with the games. Because, I mean, all of the games, the whole point of them is that there is a clear set of rules to them, but there is a lot of opportunity to break them, a lot of opportunity to break them in creative ways by, like, climbing over the seats and things. Climb over the seats, throw inflatables halfway across the room so the person doesn't need to cross the room to get to it. All of these things, like, and, you know, sometimes it's helpful for me to be the loudest person in the room so that someone who might be a bit more shy can go up on stage, can do all this fun, creative, inventive stuff, have fun, make their friends laugh, but they don't have to be the center of attention if they don't want to. You know, if you don't want the spotlight, I will take the spotlight so you can have fun just messing around with this show and playing around with the games and the toys and, you know, the opportunities that it throws up. But if you do want to be the star, if you do want to be on stage and say, hey, everyone, look at me, I'm so funny, I will let you have that, you know? I will let you have that, and I will support you, and I will laugh at whatever you say, even if it's not that funny, you know? Like,
yeah, I mean, the morph suits brings an anonymity that, of course, helps some people as they are masked, basically, to have a behavior that they wouldn't have otherwise. But there is a limit to this. For example, if you are self-conscious about your body, you can feel uncomfortable wearing a morph suit. And this is the evolution of this. I participated in the show, and I'm quite extrovert, so it wasn't a problem for me. I actually kind of messed up with the show. I'm sorry for this. You don't know this, but it's because of me that the donut, there is a giant donut for people that, and I kept it on my head because it was so cool and being silly all around. And at some point I realized that it was needed for the barcode. Yeah. And I was so sorry, like for a full minute, everyone was waiting for me to bring back the donut on stage. So I did, but what was interesting is that I was with someone that is really not an extrovert, and he still was able to participate, telling me, oh, I think you have to bring back the donut. And I said, oh, okay, awesome, thank you. Because I'm like this, and I bring the stuff. And people after that were shy were still able to come and tell me, oh, you were the donut girl. And what I mean with that is that I take away so many memories, so many things from your game, especially those with the incredible playable show and everything you did after, because it's really the pivot moment in your works, at least for me, where you started to do stuff that are really resonating at an intimate level for me. And I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. We talk about another game of yours that is much more intimate and has real psychological virtue for me. I will let you talk about this because you know what I'm talking about, I'm sure.
Yeah. just before we do that, I feel like the comment I just said about laughing at people even if they're not that funny is kind of disparaging. But that's not really what I was like. Kind of what I really mean by that is that if you when people like every suggestion is a good suggestion. And you treat every suggestion like a good suggestion. Some creative, independent thought someone has, and they bring to the show. If you treat that with positivity and you treat that with excitement, then cool stuff will emerge from that. And that cool stuff.
Comedy is about mistake.
Exactly.
Comedy is about mistake. You need to be able to make mistakes. So it's not about going on stage and being perfect. That's never happening anyway, even for a professional performer. It's about having a safe space where you're able to make mistakes, to do a trial and errors process that is not judgmental or not too judgmental, of course. Of course. And failure, exactly. Fun failure.
Yeah. I think, surprising stuff happens when you let it happen, when you stop trying to control it and you just say what comes out of this will be magical, and it tends to happen and it'll surprise you. And often I found that the things that people, come up with, the ways that people quote unquote misinterpret my games and play them in a way they're not supposed to be, quote unquote, not supposed to be played, are often more exciting than what I intended them to do in the first place.
And sorry to delay even more the book Ritual, which is obviously the game that's coming because you can see the video displayed right now. But but it's important for me. Like the stage is a space that is so sacralized. Can we stop me if I'm not speaking English correctly? But sacralized, like it's seen as sacred, that people doesn't feel like that they can be human on stage, because you're not supposed to be human on stage. You're supposed to be a performer, and a performer is seen as someone that is almost a semi-god, like someone that is beyond human. So if we think about traditional art, like ballet, in Russian ballet, the dancers are not having fun. It's not like a dance club. These people are absolutely perfect in their performance. And this is how we see the stage. And the problem with that is that it sacralizes so much the performance, the art, that people will feel like there is such a hierarchy that it's unattainable. Yeah. And what is really incredible with your playformances is that you allow people to be human. And this is why we can feel like we can do mistake and be silly. And if we crack a joke and no one laughs, but it's okay. Yeah. People will laugh of the fact that we didn't laugh.
Yeah. And they're on board with you because you tried, because you made an effort, because you pitched in.
The sacralization and your work in desacralizing performance is actually what touches me at a really deep level. I started saying I respect you and your work a lot. And it's not about technicity, because I respect a lot of people for technicity. But here, there is something profoundly benevolent in your approach.
Thank you very much.
That is really touching. Yeah, no, it's not made to be a compliment. It's just a statement. Like, take the compliment if you want. But, I mean, it's really benevolent.
Yeah, well, I mean, thank you. That does mean a lot because, well, no, I mean, I do see it as a compliment because it is something that I would like to be, so well, it means a lot that you said that, so thank you very much. It's yeah. So
any transition with maybe the book Ritual?
Yes. So so the book Ritual is a game, so you can see on screen right now paper shredder, which is eating a book. So, and that paper shredder, right, so. I'm just on a high of being benevolent. That's what's going on.
Yeah. Okay, you're full malevolent. You're such a malevolent person.
Okay. So, the book Ritual. So the book ritual is a game which you play using real books and a real paper shredder. So what you're asked to do is the book on screen is personified as a character, and it will talk to you on the screen. It'll have text and things that you have a conversation with it. It'll ask you to draw inside of it and write inside of it. But in order to progress through the dialogue, you will need to tear pages out of it and put those pages through the paper shredder. Inside the paper shredder, there are sensors. There's like break beam sensors in there so that it can tell when paper's going through. So it will not advance the story unless you shred something. So the process of the story is about you're talking to this book about grief and about loss, about regret, about guilt. And it's asking you about your personal experiences as well. And it wants you to write inside your book about these personal experiences, maybe draw pictures. And as you go through the story and as you speak to this book and this paper shredder more and more, hopefully by the end of it, you will have this object in your hands. This book in your hands will now be a husk of what it used to be. But at the same time, it will have become something totally new. It will have become a character. It will have, it will now carry the story that you told it, in the messages that you wrote inside of it and the drawings that you put inside of it and the face that you gave it and all of these things. Like the process of destroying this book has kind of resulted in creating something beautiful that did not used to be there in the world. So yeah, that's the book ritual.
Yeah, and the book ritual is, so we talked about this before on the show. I love many of your games, but this one is not funny, silly, goofy game, which is not the problem. I do a lot of silly, funny, goofy games, but altctrl has a majority of games that are playing on physicality, competition, and cooperation with your body, and taking a lot from kids game, street games, etc. And here it's a really, it's not contemplative neither, because it's an introspective experience that is fully based on an altctrl game, on an alternative controller. So that's not quite common, but it's not like you are, how do you say this, tear shredding, playing violin, like it's super dramatic. It's actually just introspective. And during the game, you will have questions asked to you sometimes. So I have a special relationship to this game. Every time I play it with the same book. So sometimes you will have to, for example, just take some words on a page and choose the words that are expressing at the best the emotion you are feeling. And then you have to put some adjectives. So sorry, obviously I do it in French. And at the end, by the act of destruction, you have an object that you created through destruction that is so much a metaphor of whatever you've been asked to recollect as a memory, because every memory is basically in the experience. It's all about loss. You will be asked a lot about things you lost in your life, an object or an emotion, a feeling, whatever, and then it's not just cathartic. It's like I can show people what I wrote just after this one. So this was my last experience of the book ritual. For this one, I'm comfortable talking about this. The memories were a lot linked to the Paris attack, so it's not really funny, obviously. But the fact that I was feeling like a mess while playing this game had real psychological virtue. Like by the end of the game, I felt better, but not in a way like I got distracted, which is often how we see entertainment. In French, entertainment, it's called divertissement, which is even more obvious. Like it's a diversion. We divert our attention from the problem to something that is not the problem, something enjoyable. But this approach of entertainment, which is fine. It's most of the games I make are like this, but the book ritual, it doesn't make you it's not a diversion. You have to tackle the problem and you will go through a form of rebirth thanks to the experience. And it's working. Like, it's not just me. Like, I'm not a community manager trying to show the game in its best, on its best side. And that's literally the kind of stuff I write in the book. Like, this was from the last one.
And we were talking, because we were talking about I haven't seen The Phoenix Rises from the Ashes of the Burned Bridges.
I went full poetry in this one.
But so because you told me about the message you wrote about the Phoenix rising from the dumpster fire, and that is, I think that is such a powerful imagery. I think it is and yeah, I can picture it very clearly, and it's a very touching thought. It's which unfortunately I cannot express more eloquently, but I think like there is just something magical in that imagery.
Yeah, we had some people in the chat first talking about how it is sentimental. It is very much sentimental. Last time I experienced it, I didn't dare talking too much about, because you asked the audience some questions, and I didn't answer too much because the mood was quite lighthearted, and I didn't feel like coming with Paris attacks, terrorism, yay! Let's have fun with Alistair. But yeah, it was like super personal, and I know I'm not the only one. And people are talking a lot also about Fluxus. So it reminded me also about Loulipo. Pouvoir de littérature potentielle. It's a French literary movement from the 60s, playing a lot with books and words. And so, for example, there is this book, Mille milliards de poèmes. This is a book with poems, but each sentence is detachable. So you can, it's like modularly or procedurally generated poems. And stuff like this. They play a lot with books and how we can tell a new story based on this. And yeah, there is this really artsy vibe in the book ritual that is fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so just to sort of clarify something, that, because there's sort of two ways that it's experienced, the book ritual, there is the installation with the shredder, which I've taken around to exhibitions, and you can play it at home without the paper shredder, and you just have to tear the pages up yourself, and that's downloadable from my website. But the other way in which you can play it is when I have run it as a live stream, which is something I started doing this year. In the book, the story. So basically, the standard experience is about 2 hours long. The stream version is a kind of 1 hour performed chapter in which the audience is invited to watch along with a book and write and draw along with all the prompts that come up on screen. And, they can do that in their own books at home, or they can type into the chat, and I will write their messages and draw what they would like drawn in my copy of the book, which I'm putting through the shredder. And I think what's interesting there is some people are very active in the chat, and they are talking about what they're doing, or they're offering up things that they would like me to add to my book. And some people are, they're just following along. They're keeping to themselves. They're not involving themselves in the chat. And I think both of those are good. I think it's important, for a stream like this, when you're hosting it, it's an important thing to do is to allow for all kinds of all kinds of experiences. You know, some people are going to want to stay more isolated while they're doing it because that is more comfortable for them. Some people will want, you know, to type laughs and smiles and jokes and things because that's how they feel comfortable. And the important thing is that everybody who's, you know, kind of taking part, you know, silently in their own way, you know, without interacting with the chat, that they feel welcomed, that they feel that what they are doing is valid. But also everybody who's interacting in the chat should also feel like they are being listened to and they're being responded to. And I think that's sort of something that's very, I don't know, it's very important to me. Like, I wouldn't like to create something where people feel left out, you know, particularly when it is, you know, the book ritual is about asking yourself about, you know, difficult subjects, asking you how you feel about loss and grief and, you know, various sad moments you've experienced. And I think it would be unfair for that, you know, that experience to be, you know, available to extroverts but not introverts, or available to introverts but not extroverts. You know, it's like, if you can support people in whatever way they feel is comfortable, then that's a thing to try to do, you know. It's I feel like I can't quite find the most eloquent phrasing, but yeah.
No, it's important. Maybe it's also the limit for the book ritual that you cannot expect everyone to interact in the chat, which is the main way people play on Twitch right now. They expect a lot of interaction also because the platform is encouraging this, rewarding this. The more people interact in the chat, the more the channel will be seen, etc. And it's not actually the experience where the chat interaction, it's important because it can validate some people, some feelings, etc. But in this one, you can also just go with the flow, try to follow what's said, and if there is a step that you missed, that's okay. You can move on, which is different from other playformances you did on the Twitch, your Twitch channel.
Yeah.
Maybe we can talk about the other stuff you do on Twitch.
Yes. So one of these, which I'm very proud of, was a game I made with a giant chessboard. So I'm just going to put that up on the video here. So this was a version of that performance that I did for the Now Play This event. And you can see me walking around in barefoot now, moving tiny little pawns on screen. So what this piece was, I mean, I'll show you how it looked at the beginning of the hour. There's me sat down cross-legged, introducing it. But there were, it's a giant chessboard with 44 squares by 44 squares. Like, the reason I made this was kind of as a kind of playable installation to convey a kind of a sense of futility that I found in the world. I mean, you know, thinking about things like the environment, for example, you know, where it seems like such a big problem and like no step that we can do as individuals can really make a difference, and the people with the power to actually make meaningful changes, it feels like they're not really listening, you know? And I kind of wanted to make something that captured that sense of futility. And so I made a chessboard where there are a stupid number of squares and the only pieces on the board are pawns. So the only move you can do is the most boring move over and over again, making baby steps towards a game that will always end in a stalemate. And then I decided, okay, I'd made it, and it was like, well, how do I get this out into the world? Like, how do I create an opportunity for people to play this? And so I decided to do a Twitch stream with it. So I did one, and then it went very well, and then the Now Play This event asked if I could do one for them, and this is what we're seeing right now. So what I did with this stream is, the rules of it are the rules of chess, you know? The pawns move like normal pawns, what I didn't tell the audience is that anything they typed into chat, I would do on screen. So it tells you on screen like how to move a piece, like what to type in. But you could also type in, you could type in loads of illegal moves. You could type move the king right to the middle of the board. Or you could type in kick a bunch of the pawns or something, and I would do it. And at first the audience like didn't know that, and so they kind of accidentally did an illegal move, and I went and performed it. And then you had a bunch of people in the chat going, wait, he just did it, like, but that's not a legal chess move, but he did it. And then they started pushing the limits of what they could do and what they could do with this. So this sort of, the stream kind of, as it grew and evolved, you started to see like there was a cuddly toy egg got added to it. One of the black pawns and one of the white pawns fell in love, which is what you can see over here as they're on a big love heart. Some of the pawns unionized. Some of the pawns got COVID and had to go into quarantine. Some of the black pawns and white pawns joined forces to make a new faction. And at the end of it, and I wonder if I can find a timestamp where this actually happened. I'll show you, part of the board got removed and replaced with a Carcassonne board. And the meeples from Carcassonne started invading the board. The whole thing ended with me... they asked me to put all of the pawns in a glass of water and then drink the glass of water. And because the glass of water had the kings in it, then I counted this as this is the point at which the king's souls have been drunk. They have been consumed by the giant that is me. And so that was, and there's the pawns going into the glass right now. And that was considered a checkmate. You know, the war was over. The war was over. Both teams have lost or both teams have won. But we had 20 minutes left on the clock. So for the final 20 minutes, we constructed a kind of epilogue for the world where, and this was all driven by, this was not me like going, oh, and then this happens and then this happens. This was people typing into the chat, like, what, like the pawns all teamed together to build a ladder to heaven, which heaven was the board that got flipped over. God appeared in the form of the egg. That appeared, so the pawns went to have their meeting with God, and while they were ascending to heaven, the meeples from Carcassonne reclaimed the board and started the next generation of species on Planet Chessboard. And it was really uplifting, and all of this just came from this kind of collective people throwing around ideas and having this, you know, weirdo on the other side of the camera just doing them as soon as he read them. And what it ended up like, starting out with something where the whole point of it was to capture a sense of, you know, futility and pointlessness and kind of the weight of the world, to turn it into something that was kind of uplifting, and because the audience embraced it, they took control and they turned it into something beautiful, and that was a really special experience. Like,
yeah, we talked about this. So just before the show, I didn't know actually that's the only game performance of yours that I didn't know about. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. I think it's way underrated, and it deserves way more love because there are so many things that are interesting in this. I don't know, I'd say the first one that's obvious is how players assumed it was a really ruled experience, and it was all about, we talked about this before the show, the tacit rules that that looks like a chessboard, so obviously it's a chess game, and assuming the rule is like so much more symbolic and a metaphor of the real world. Like people assume that it's a capitalistic world, and in capitalism, things are working that way and not in another way. So just the title Pawns is as a meta reading of it. And we talked about how basically players assumed it would be a ludus experience, and it ended up being a Padia experience. So just quickly for the audience, in case someone never heard of this, I'm pretty sure everyone did, but just in case, ludus Padia, their word coming from Roger Caillois. He wrote a book called Men Play Games in English. It's the English name of it. He's in sociology, and he's a French guy who made different classifications for games. And one is luduspedia, ludus being play that involves predefined rules, goals, and structure, basically a classic game. And pedia is play that involves player-driven structure and exploration and creativity like a toy. So to put it really simply, let's say it's a more toy experience and a more gamey experience.
Yeah.
So it happened to be a bit more toy, more narrative, and people could set up the rules of the world. And I love this moral of the story. The second one is how you convey the experience as a giant. I told you about Black and White and how in the game Black and White, as a god, you have a hand, but also a creature. And this giant is your way to interact with the world. And you were the creature from Black and White, like you were the giant intervening on the world, interacting on the world based on a pantheon of gods. That was the chat.
Yes.
And the pantheon of gods got to negotiate with one another to tell the creature what to do on the chessboard. So this is a second level of reading that is interesting for me. There is much more, but how it's a metaphor for the world is fascinating for me.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, that's not a question. It's just a sentence.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it is... I don't know. I mean, I think there was something that came out of basically just kind of, you know, being a vessel for the audience to play through, being, you know, a set of hands that the audience uses. And again, yeah, I don't know, there is a similarity with, you know, when I'm on stage performing the playable show, and the idea is, you know, I'm not there to be the funniest person in the room. I'm there to big up the audience and make them feel special and important. And it's the kind of same thing here. You know, I am just a vessel for the players on the other side of the screen, you know, on Twitch, typing into chat to express their creative potential. And I mean, you know, you mentioned briefly, I'm a big fan of Clown. You know, Clown as a performance style is all about finding the game, you know, and it's like, the game could be anything, you know. If you and I were staring at each other right now and we just suddenly find the game of staring at each other and making sure you don't want to be the first one to blink or something. Now, I can't actually see your eyes right now because I'm looking into the camera, but I'm going to guess you've already blinked, so I can blink now. And then blinking could become a game as we try to blink at the same time with, you know. And these kind of games can occur spontaneously. And that's a lot of what a clown is doing on stage when they interact with an audience, is they just find someone to interact with in the smallest of ways. It could be just smiling at them, and they will respond in some way. And then the clown can build on that, and you're finding the game. What is the thing that this person instinctively wants to play with you? And that's a lot of what's going on when I'm doing things on stage, when I'm... when I'm performing the playable show, when I'm being, you know, the giant of the chessboard, like, is the audience, you know, they're bouncing around with games between themselves on the chat, which I can't read fast enough. And they are bouncing around games with me because they're going, wait, if I type in this, will he actually do it? And, you know, and most of the time I will. And sometimes they'll suggest something ridiculous or impossible that I'll have to interpret. But the game for me becomes saying, yes, I like that impossible suggestion, and I'm going to make it possible. And so you play with that idea, and then you bounce it back to them, and then the stakes are higher. It's like, oh, well, can they suggest something more impossible? And that's how it kind of I guess, how it unfurls, really.
Making the quality of the performance depending a lot on the audience, actually, and how much they will be able to come up with stuff for you to interpret. And that's interesting because it could lead us to other games of yours that you did on another topic that is important for you, another theme of yours, by the fact that, as Celia said in the chat, as a performer in a playformance, you are part of the game. You're a game element,
Yeah.
among others, of course. And the audience is performing with you, not on the same level, of course, but still by the quality of what they will come up with, etc., they will perform with you. And in video game, it's already an interactive art in general. It's already quite hard to say who's the actual author of the piece because people are intervening on the piece, obviously. But the thing is, in traditional video game, they will change variable, like the position of a character will be variables. Here, it's even more confused, blurring the lines between the author and the player, because they are literally performing with you. I mean, they're literally sometimes even at almost at the same level as you, sometimes not, depending on the stage design, let's say. But of course, I'm thinking about different variations you did on Sonic the Hedgehog, which is something you are known for. Usually people know you else for playformances or because of Sonic. Oh yeah, that's Sonic guy.
It's certainly, the Sonic stuff is something that's kind of blown up a bit in the last year. I mean, I'll show you, let's see if I can bring up a link of, here's something I made that got really popular on Twitter very suddenly last year, which is, and it's probably going to blare out music, so I'm going to have to mute this super fast as soon as I play it. There we go. But this is an emulator. It's a hack of an open source Sega Mega Drive emulator, edited so that every time Sonic collects a ring, it switches to a different game. And this is one of many experiments and weird things that I've been doing with or to Sonic the Hedgehog. So another examples, let's see what else I can bring up for you. Oh yeah, this one's a nice one. So this is Sonic the Hedgehog 1 on the Sega Mega Drive, edited so that every time Sonic collects a ring, a color is removed from the universe. So if you show it early on, it's nice and straightforward. You can see I've collected a couple of rings, a couple of colors have gone, and they all start to collapse inwards to the middle. And what happens to the play experience is, as you play through it, the game gets harder and harder because you get less and less visual information until a point which seemed to happen about roughly 15 minutes of play into the game, where the game just becomes impossible. But through this experience, you know, how you are interacting with the game is changing. You know, you go later on, and here I'm fighting a boss, and there's a lot of colors missing now, so I'm not getting the information on where the boss is supposed to be swinging a wrecking ball at you. I can't really see where it is. And I've done things like where every time you collect a ring, it writes random data into the level, so the level becomes this randomized, you know, hacky layout. I did a thing with Pokemon where every time you got into a Pokemon battle, it would, the data from the Pokemon you were fighting would infect all versions of the Pokemon that you had, and it would infect the text and things to kind of simulate a sort of environmental decay going on. And I guess if there's one kind of sort of central idea in all of these, and I'll see if I can find the 11 to time video just so you can see a bit of what that looks like.
That's what I had in mind when I said you blur the line between the author and the player even more, because it's already blurry. It's a blurred line in video game, but at least these are variables that the developer intended to put in the game for the player to interact with. While here, the players are directly intervening on the code, like they are altering the code of the game. So it's one step further towards the author for me. And actually some of the Sonic corrupted data made some really beautiful glitchy art visuals that I love.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of fun stuff that you can do with that. I mean, particularly playing around with the memory. But I kind of like the idea of, hacking around with these, classic games and finding something new in them. And it could be through, changing the controller, so making it so it's a controller that the team has to share, a team of people has to share rather than one person having on their own, or, a controller, or, having extra rules in so, when Sonic collects a ring, it writes random data into the RAM until the game crashes and you see what things come out of that. But I kind of like the idea that the way that you play these games is not the way that was intended by the creator of the game. Is that, that the challenges that come up are not challenges that were intended to be there. So you are finding a gameplay that is like naturally occurring in the world. It's like, I call it found gameplay, like found footage or found art or something, and I think there is a thing where we put, you have a game, particularly if it's like in a plastic cartridge or something, and it's like, this is a finished object. This is the way it is supposed to be. This is the way it is intended to be. And the way I see it, why not? Why not, have this not as a finished thing, but as a starting point? This is your canvas, and I'm going to make something new out of that canvas, and it could be a new play experience. It could be a new kind of visual experience. What I'm showing on screen right now is this Journey to Lavender Town thing, was a 27-hour long art film, I guess, which gets slower and slower and slower to the point of absurdity as the game goes on, and more of it gets horribly corrupted. I think I like the idea of saying, the way things are, given to you isn't necessarily the way they're supposed to be. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. My baseline is question your spoons. It doesn't come from me. It comes from a book called The Infraordinary. Right. And what they mean by this is question the daily objects around you and find a new purpose for them. First, it helps you staying creative, but mainly it helps you stay critical, because even if it's to find them a playful use, it keeps your mind sharp, always looking at things and asking yourself, what's the frame? What's the frame I'm looking? What's my perspective on this? What's my frame to read this? And question it. And this is why my baseline on Twitter is burn your keyboard, destroy your mouse, and question your spoons. So it makes absolute sense. Yeah. We have to move on. There is one final project I'd love to talk a bit with you about, which I think is linked to this, but it's more for you to find a purpose to what is being told to you. Because basically what we are talking about, questioning your little spoons, is what you do when the audience is asking you, now drink the pawns from the chessboard, and you have to find a way to make this make sense somehow in the context. So you have a series, I'd say, of Twitch performances like this. One that we won't talk about that much, but I love it, is one where you pretended to know stuff about soccer while you don't know anything about soccer.
Yeah, I know very little about football, but I know how to imitate the way that football managers talk on TV.
This one was hilarious, but you made another one that is maybe more relevant to what we are talking about right now. That the stream is sponsored by, and let's talk about it quickly before the show and tell.
Yeah. So this is one of my very recent, kind of streams. What I did is I set myself up, and we've got a nice kind of, because I made it look like I was in a TV screen, so now we've got a TV screen inside a TV screen. But the audience could type into Twitch, and anything they typed in would become what this thing was sponsored by. So now this is sponsored by the poem that I just wrote, which is someone has just typed in, that's what it's sponsored by. So now I am advertising the poem I just wrote. And the audience, they can type in new things constantly, and it changes what I am advertising, what the special offer is, like is it 50% off, is it you get a free pencil, and then what they have to do to claim it, like, you know, enter bananas at checkout or something. And here's one that came up when the audience started sending me, I had to start advertising emoticons. And I'm glad I picked this frame. I didn't know what frame I was picking. I just picked one at random. But basically the audience were looking of different things that they could type in that might mess me up in different ways. And me as a performer, I'm going, okay, I see your attempt to mess you up, and I'm going to roll with it. I'm going to try my best to sell the emoticon of someone going like that. And it was just a lot of fun, but, you know, it's this real kind of, the whole thing is about building a rapport and building a game with the audience. It's a very kind of clown kind of thing where, you know, you find a game with the audience. The game was try to find something that you can type in that will mess up Alistair. And my role on the screen is to put up a good attempt at not getting messed up by it. And you'll see, like, as the course of I did this stream went on for like 6 hours. So over the course of it, you get to see me get more and more tired. There's some Japanese text there. There we go. That was very hard to advertise something I couldn't even say. So, and that's the excitement of it, you know, is that I love just kind of giving the audience an opportunity to flex their creativity. And, you know, they don't need to worry about getting up on stage. They don't need to worry about, you know, setting up a Twitch stream and getting a load of people on it or whatever. You know, they can participate in the creative excitement by playing with me. And they are performers. Everyone in chat in this, typing all this stuff, they are performers. They are comedians. They are coming up with funny stuff, rotten teeth covered in chocolate. The only difference is they don't have to worry about embarrassing themselves. And I think that is quite a nice gift to give people, is the opportunity to be really silly without worrying about embarrassing themselves.
I love the nothing experience. Like, and now you can have nothing for 20% off. That's incredible. You have double nothing. And this moment was incredible.
Yeah. I mean, you can probably, I can fade in, what was I saying here, just to give you a feel.
Covered
just realized you used the same TV I used for the show's layout. Okay, that's a silly comment, but I'm just realizing it. Tatiana's having an epiphany. Yeah, it's the same, because probably for the same reason I typed TV PNG transparent on Google's image. You probably did the same, and you stumbled upon the same TV.
Yeah, the magic of theatre, everyone.
And yeah, we are really professionals here. And so we talked a lot about games you animate and host on Twitch, and we are on Twitch. So it's not possible for you not to perform a game right now for our audience.
Obviously, that is very true. So yes, I am about to switch us over to a game. This is a game that I've done for a live stream and has been incredibly good fun. So let me just got a little bit of clicking to do, and then I'm going to switch us over to this camera view, and I'm going to move, and I remember I made a note to move my microphone as well, so that you can hear me while I'm doing this, as we begin painting. Yes, and now it's hard to see whether I can see, but this is a game, I call it, we can't paper over this forever, because I thought it involves paper, and I thought it needed a title, a long title. There we go. But what you can see on screen going on is here, you've got red, green, blue, and yellow are 4 colours that are hopefully being picked up by this camera and interpreted correctly as the 4 colours. If you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, this is what it's using. The camera's looking at that to judge, to try and get a picture of what colour is what as it interprets it. The game is that I need to paint something in 3 minutes that matches the combination of colours that the robot wants to see. The robot, as in the computer program, sorry. You as an audience can type in, if you type the words art is into chat right now, followed by something, so say art is bananas, and that will become a thing that I need to paint. I will also need you to type in a combination of colours and numbers. So like red 30%, blue 20%, white 50% or something. And those will be the things that I need to paint. So if someone could try typing in some colours, and hopefully if you type in the words art is, say, someone type in art is red, and could I get, like, say, a combination of colours and numbers? So, you know, green 42, red 83, white 7, or something like that. So just as its own line, so you don't need to say art is, I'm just looking for...
I like to say artists, like it makes silly sentences.
Here we go. Cool. We've got the first one has come through, and it's an aeroplane in 50% red and 50% yellow. So thank you very much for that first thing. So my challenge is to paint a beautiful aeroplane, and I have got 3 minutes to do this in. So I'm going to squirt some yellow paint on and just try and get 50% red on here. And this is new paint. It just arrived in the post today, and it smells really foul. So that's an exciting thing going on right now. So we can see the colours are being captured, and I already have about 50% of yellow on there. But we need, and I have just pulled my own earphones out, so I can't hear anything. But we need to let's get that airplane in. So let's make that airplane nice and red. So I'm going to get myself the red paint and squirt it on, and I need to paint a beautiful aeroplane with this red paint. And you can see at the bottom of the screen, it's judging these colours, and it's trying to tell how much art this is. So here we got an airplane. Let's get a beautiful... There's got wings on it as well, and a propeller. We need a propeller at the front because propeller planes are most fun. And so there we've got a nice airplane which you can just about make out. But we have a lot of colours that we still need more yellow in there. We need more red. So maybe we add the details in yellow. So let's squirt some windows on there onto the airplane so people can see out. So that will add some yellow to it. What else can we do? What else can we add in? So when you type in colours and numbers, put in like at least 2 colours and at least 2 numbers, and that'll make it work. So what have we got going on? I've got about a minute left to finish this aeroplane. So what do I need to do to make it better? Well, firstly, I think we certainly need more yellow to make it more art. And I need to cover up some of that green with yellow. So let's just get some nice thick yellow to sort of stop it from reading that green as yellow, which it is just about. Or I could take a nice big piece of yellow card and just stick it on. There we go. Stick it on. Make it better. But it still doesn't look very aeroplaney, does it? So what can we do to make this more aeroplaney? Let's try and let's separate out. Maybe the propeller was a bad idea. Let's make it a jumbo jet. So on we go. And it's getting more and more art. And there we go. That's the first one. And as I stand back and let the camera calibrate, you can kind of see what's going on here. And so I've got time is up. So I can continue painting this aeroplane and try and make a better aeroplane. But if any of you type the word next into chat, it will pick one of your suggestions.
Next.
Someone type next into chat and we'll get one of your suggestions will come up and I will need to paint that suggestion on top of what's already here. So thank you very much for requesting a new painting. So let's see how much art was that.
Thank you, Poletus Desilus. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that was 78% art. And we have a new challenge called Blue 40. So how am I going to interpret Blue 40? Well, let's interpret Blue 40 as the Blue Man Group, but there's 40 of them. So let's try and do 40 stick people. So I'm going to get some blue on this paper and we need... Oh, okay, this is interesting. We need the Blue Man Group on a bed of mostly red. So that's going to be interesting. How do we reconcile this? And the colours, it's not picking that up as blue. So what I might do is adjust the sensors somewhat. And hopefully that will start picking up that blue paint.
Oh, the Blue Man groups are these guys all painted in blue. I didn't know this.
Yes, that's right. So...
Oh, Celia knows someone that was her partner is part of the teach team of the Blue Man Group in Boston.
That's really cool. That is really
awesome.
Cool. So let's draw, or maybe, it's the Blue Man Group's 40th birthday party because there is no way that I can draw 40 blue men and have it involve that little blue. So we've got roughly the right amount of blue now. So now we need to add some red. So they are the Blue Man Group. Why are they in a red situation on their birthday? Maybe they're in the red room from what's that? The David Lynch thing. What's that?
Oh,
Twin
Mulholland
Peaks.
Drive? No. Oh.
Which one had the red room in it? Was the red room Twin Peaks?
Twin Peaks. Yeah. Twin Peaks in the dreamy stuff with the dwarf and yeah.
Right, excellent. So that's where the Blue Man Group are right now, and it's their 40th birthday.
In David Lynch's Velvet Room.
Yeah,
Velvet Room in Twin Peaks. Thank you, Ash.
There we go. So we're doing quite well. This is apparently 85% art. So we're doing well. We've got the Blue Man Group. What we haven't got, we need a bit more blue. So maybe we need to write the words happy birthday in backwards because that's what they would want. So there's a backwards H, a backwards A, a backwards P, and which way does a Y go? There's the words happy. You can just about read that as the word happy spelt backwards. And I'm just going to put B because otherwise we'll use up all the red. And there we go. That's the letter B. So happy B. If they're having a birthday party in the red room in Twin Peaks. Now, the time is up. So you can, if you wanted, I could continue painting the Blue Man Group in the red room of Twin Peaks. Or you could type in the word next. And I will have to paint something else on top of this. And someone typed in next. Excellent. So, what is next for us? What is next? So, the next, banana 3. So, I mean, this is nice and easy. 3 bananas is easier to draw than...
But without yellow. Bananas without yellow.
Bananas without yellow. You like to make things nice and easy, don't you? That's the magic.
I'm not benevolent. You're the benevolent one.
I am the benevolent one. So, okay, 3 bananas on a mix of blue and red. So let's say the bananas are arriving by boat, or they're just floating bananas in the sea. Against
Flying bananas. Flying a benevolent banana.
benevolent bananas.
That's a
Brilliant.
genius idea.
Yes, the benevolent bananas. That'll be the name of my band. So we've got benevolent
That
bananas
fits you so well.
above the
That
deep
fits
blue
you
sea,
so well.
and we've got some. Thank you. And we've got some clouds. We've got some clouds in the background for the bananas. The green, but they're green because they're not ripe yet. So there we go. We've got some beautiful blue clouds. We've got a red sky because it's the morning. Red sky in the morning. Bananas warming. And now let's get 3 bananas on here. 1 banana. 2 banana. 3 banana. And they are floating in the sea. Now, everyone knows bananas are wider than that. So let's get the palette knife and spread out that green and make them more bananoid. And this is looking quite good. This is looking quite good. Let's spread out these bananas. It's not enjoying me covering up the camera, so that's there we go. So we've got 3 bananas over the sea. It is reading them as being very very blue right now. That is not reading the green as green. I dropped the green on the floor. I'll take my socks off so I don't get paint all over them. And I will stick some more green paint in hope that it gets picked up as green. It does not. So let's adjust the calibration. So you can see what I'm doing on the top camera is I'm just putting some stuff on the sensors to change what color it thinks green is. The sensors are just things that the camera can look at. So let's see if that affects it in a positive direction. It's not. It's only 32% art. This is a struggle. This picture is a struggle. This is stretching
It's
my
so
artistic
much not
chops.
art.
I know.
Yeah, so much not art. Like,
this is a very mean, very tough critic, isn't it? It's a very tough critic today. Let's see if that makes any difference. This is the great adventure of art. Please recognize the blue as blue. Please. Okay, that's slightly better.
Oh,
that seems
good
to have
enough.
fixed it.
Okay.
If I stand in the right place. It is not sure. I think it's struggling to tell which thing it's supposed to look at. I think I know what I need to do. I think it's that thing is messing it up. So let's stick that there and see if that makes any difference. There we go. That is proper live hacking. So we've got about 86% art on this one. As long as I stand in the right place, we've got 86% art. And if you want to see another picture, all you need to do is type next into chat and it will be up to me to paint something new. So what's next? Or do you want to see me improve these bananas? Which I guess I'll do until you tell me not
the
to.
sensor is way too chaotic. Let's go for next. Oh, someone else asked for next.
Excellent.
Thank you, Julie.
Beautiful. So let's get myself 85% art. I am pretty happy with. And now, Alistair Aitcheson. I'm going to Alistair Aitcheson and the Benevolent Bananas, wasn't it? So
Yeah.
in 70% green and 30% red. Right. So let's. How am I going to do this? Well, firstly, we need to spread out. So I think I'm going to make my face nice and big to take up a lot of space with this green. So let's make a nice big Alistair face. So does that look green? It does not think it's green yet, so I need to add some more green paint to it. So let's get some more green paint in there. And spread that green paint around.
It's very green now.
It is very green. Excellent. And now I need to spread it around. And, oh, I can use a palette knife to kind of carve an expression in myself. So,
Or just a knife.
or just a knife. Yeah, I could just slice up the page. So let's see. Is it good enough? I can draw a nice big bushy pair of eyebrows. I think a nose. There's my nose. And here is my big toothy winning smile. There we go.
5 minutes before.
We've got 5 minutes to wrap up. Okay.
No, we have 10.
Okie
But,
dokie.
as we have a few announcements to make, I'd
That
say
is correct.
5 minutes.
All right, so maybe it's this one and one more painting after this then.
Yes.
But yeah, feel free to ask me questions about it while I'm doing it. I think one of the big things, why am I giving myself stupid hair? Actually, no, I know I'm giving myself stupid hair.
People are saying that the render right now is pure nightmare fuel, which I agree. Like, it feels like it's what nightmares are made of.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
nice.
How about that? Is that friendlier? There we go.
Red eyes friendlier.
Yeah.
It feels like you are making, with ketchup when we do a little smiley in kids' plates with ketchup. It feels that way.
Yeah.
But for a horror game.
Yeah. So let's get big.
It's scarier and scarier.
Yeah.
No, it's the mayonnaise.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I like clowns. So let's get myself a nice clown nose. Here we go. There's me on my way back from clown school. And we just need some benevolent bananas in here. So, I need to clear up all this blue and replace it with red. So let's do that for starters. But yeah, basically, this is a game that I was working on all this kind of camera stuff that's picking up the paint. I made it as a game a couple of years ago and tried it out with my friends, and it just didn't really work as a kind of game in the traditional sense, like as something I could set up in an exhibition. And it just wasn't very fun. But when I was basically, middle of the pandemic, feeling a bit put out about not being able to do stage shows anymore. I'm going to be a renegade. I'm going to stick some yellow bananas in just because I'm a rebel. And there we go. There's the 3 bananas. Having bananoid fun. But yeah, I was feeling a bit put out about not being able to do stage shows because of the pandemic. And I realized the big thing that I missed about it was making a mess. During my shows, I like to get people to climb over the chairs and things like that. I missed doing that. I missed getting people to make a mess and enjoy making a mess. I feel like a lot of the world around us, we are encouraged to consume politely, just like the video games. It's fun to hack classic Sonic games and make them do weird stuff they're not supposed to do, because why should Sonic be the way someone gave it to you in a cartridge, and it's the same, I like to make a mess because it's, I don't know, I just like to make a mess, and I miss doing that in my shows. And so using streaming as an opportunity to make a mess and to create a kind of space where the audience can pitch into making a mess and be a part of it by, throwing me stuff that, that I should paint and watching me get the paint everywhere and everything, that they are vicariously enjoying the process of making a mess without having to worry about tidying up afterwards. And they are as involved in the creative process as I am, but they just don't have to worry about clearing up afterwards. And I don't know, to me that's kind of special. Someone type in next and we'll have one more painting for the road. Art is a mess. Oh, I love it.
I did the final next.
Okay. So I appreciate, because I've dragged on, we are running out of time, aren't we?
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm going to do a super quick interpretation of this and then we'll get to things. Art is a mess.
Art is a mess.
Brilliant. Okay. That was not as smart an idea as I thought it was. I've got paint everywhere. Brilliant. Well, that's good. I'm going to do the rest of the comments left-handed, and then we'll go to the thing. Well, that was a lot of fun. Shall we come on to talking about the announcements?
Yeah.
Cool. So, right. Well, coming up very soon is the Indiecade Presents Playable Theatre Live Action Game Symposium. So that's coming up in just a few weekends' time on October the 16th and 17th. And there is also, of course, the Indiecade Festival taking place here on the Indiecade Twitch channel, October 22nd to 24th. So myself and Tatiana will be there as part of it. We'll be streaming some of the selected games, as will a whole host of other streamers and performers. It's going to be fascinating, so please do come along. It'll be fantastic. I think that's all the announcements.
Yeah, people are saying that you were a bit away from your mic.
Oh yeah, I forgot to move my mic back. Do I have to make the announcements again?
Just as a recap, so there are 2 events coming up, and the first one was Alistair. Oh, you got it? Bubble Reg got it. Okay, it was okay. The first one was Playable Theatre Live Action Game Symposium. Second one, the Indiecade, General Indiecade Festival will be online soon. We'll be there. Other fantastic people will be there. You should too. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's all we have time for. I need to go wash my hands.
Okay, I'm afraid we are reaching the end of the show anyway. And Alistair, is there anything you'd like to add before we head off?
No, I think I'd quite like to head off and clean up the paint before it dries.
Cool. So thank you so much, Alistair. It's been fantastic to have you in the hot seat tonight.
Thanks for having me. It's been an absolute delight.
And thanks to the audience, as usual, you are wonderful. Thanks so much. Goodbye, everyone. See you all again soon. Bye.